see through him. It was solid.
And I had the feeling that somebody was trying to enter my body or make a contact with me in some way.
About a foot from my bed was standing a ghost.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Oregon Paranormal Radio. I'm here with my cohort, Ben Robison of ASEP, for another, hopefully, technical-free episode. We're doing something a little different today. We are Skyping in three directions today. And as it turns out, we've already had some technical difficulties. But aside from that, Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'm really excited to introduce our guest for the night. He runs paranormalinsight.net. He's a psychic medium, a historian, and a paranormal researcher. I'd like to welcome William Becker to the show. How are you, William?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Great. Welcome to the show, William.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
So I've been wanting to chat with you for the longest time. You know, we briefly have time to chat because it's so hectic at the Oregon Ghost Conference every year.
Right.
But I've always been interested in your story. How did you get started? Where was that aha moment for you when it comes to the paranormal?
Well, I saw my first ghost when I was about 8, and I was running around Oregon City in the historic area with a group of friends, and I kept seeing this kind of a strange-looking little boy our age peeking around. So I asked the ringleader of the group of us who it was, and I asked if he could play with us, and he said, "Oh no, that's Carl Green. That's the little boy's name. He's dead, and he died of typhoid," he said. So we kept playing and didn't worry about playing with the little boy. And it's actually a story we use in our ghost tours now too, because we've done the research. He's seen all over town, and he is historically a little boy that died from typhoid from playing in the creeks in Oregon City in 1913.
Wow.
So we've got a pretty good history on him. And then in college and different things, I worked on and off with a lot of psychic work. And I took a break for a while. Sometimes if you're not careful, you can get in a little over your head. Sure. And I had some kind of interesting people around who weren't creating the healthiest energy.
I can understand that.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then several years ago, when I started doing ghost tours again, basically is when I really picked it back up again. And a trip to Wellington, my first trip to Wellington, was the experience that really said, yes, I can do it. I'd done some remote readings on the way to some investigations before that matched up with what I saw, but when we walked around Wellington, and I knew which buildings were where by the end, what I felt from what was in the spot, and I got names and occupations of people on the train, like engineer name and things like that, and some of the entities I was picking up on and matched other people's stories. I thought, yeah, I really am pretty good at this. So
now, did you guys have a target though that you were aiming for? Did you know who you wanted to be speaking with?
No, I wasn't allowed. I went with West Coast Ghost Hunters.
Okay.
And we met up with Karen Fraser and Jamie Coates and Bert Coates and Karen's husband Jim, and I think Tanner, Karen's son, was there. I think a few other people were there too, and then our team. And we were there to investigate. And my team, Karen had already written Avalanche of Spirits, but my team wouldn't let me read it.
Sure. Because
they were already knowing the psychic work I was getting into. But that was the test that really cemented for me that, okay, yeah. I've investigated on and off different ways for a number of years. And again, getting into the ghost tours, it all took off. It was kind of an opening of a door.
So walk me through how you're able to take your psychic end of investigating and bring it into the technical end. Because, of course, there's so many people out there that are very skeptical about psychics, and they say, well, it's fine that you're bringing them into this investigation, but we can't go off of feelings or things. We want that hard data. How do you balance that when you do an investigation?
That's a good question, and to be honest, I'm skeptical too. I mean, I'm even skeptical of myself. And one of my rules that I always tell people is, if you get a psychic who says they're always right, run, but not towards them, the other way. And what I do with this is I can help with EVP sessions, because if I'm picking up names, or if I'm picking up boys or little boys or girls or adults or whatever, if I'm seeing a situation, then we can use that. I can use that as a question. Is so-and-so here? Or is there somebody of the age 10 here? Or do you like to ride horses? Or is your favorite color blue? Or,
Right.
things like that.
From a science-based angle, we're always trying to rely on our equipment to help us corroborate anything that we believe is spirits, speaking to us from the other side of the veil. But having someone like yourself with that ability to be able to, also pick that up, and you're not a little piece of an instrument sitting in my palm, I've always found very fascinating. But even back to what you started your answer with, that you remain skeptical, I think that is a very, very important piece that I don't think is really adhered to with a lot of psychics, mediums, clairvoyants, so on and so forth, because it's like you said, a lot of them almost get this ego, and they think that everything that they get is accurate. So I think that's great that you remain skeptical, in that method of yours.
I agree too.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it helps when we just realize that we're not defined by one or two things that we can do. We're
Right.
a complex piece of biology that, if we look at the whole picture, it really kind of helps take the ego out of it. If my whole definition of myself is as a psychic, then I better not ever be wrong.
Right.
But then we can also too help with research. It's like, well, look and see if there are people of these names that were there. And to be honest with me, sometimes I nail the names just right on. Sometimes I'm really close and we can get it. And sometimes I'm so far off, it's like being in another planet.
Sure.
And we can also then kind of help too if somebody has got a millimeter and they're picking up some pretty heavy spikes of EMF. We can maybe say, this is what we see here. This is why you're getting that. And it might not be somebody who's going to communicate with us. It might not be somebody who's going to show up on film. But we can give something to that piece. We can't prove it, but we can help give some personality to it that maybe we can check out later. And then sometimes what we pick up can be verified either by other psychics or by stories that go with a place that we hadn't heard before. So it kind of meshes.
Well, and I think that dynamic itself that you're touching on is something our equipment can't provide us. So that's why having folks like yourself around is extremely powerful, and adds that extra element, that that extra layer of character or emotion that sometimes our equipment failed to be able to do at this point in time.
Yeah, and my favorite part of the investigations really is getting to know some of the entities there and hearing their stories. I like to do that with living people, so why not with the dead? And to be honest, sometimes they're not necessarily human. I didn't say demon. People jump to the conclusion sometimes that non-human or aggressive is evil or demonic.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And that's not my experience at all.
Not mine as well.
Same here.
I won't say they don't exist, and this can be very controversial, but I haven't run across anything of pure evil.
But that's a good point you're making, because so many people, like Casey, I'm sure you can vouch for this. How many of our cases come to us and they start off like, I've got a demon. And you're like, okay, so tell us what's going on. And sure, there's some things that trigger red flags, and you're like, all right, that could fall in that category. But when it's all done and said, I'm pretty sure that we feel one thing that's confident. We may not be able to come out of that house or that residence and say your house is haunted or not, but what we can usually feel pretty confident about is that it was not demonic.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, Ben, because I was just speaking with a new client who said that one of their kids on their back had 3 scratches. Now, the first thing that they had told me was, now I watch Ghost Adventures and I know how it goes with the 3 scratches. I have kids and you have kids. It's so possible for children to get scratches and it not be a demonic force. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you literally can't jump to conclusions until you have all the facts. And, you know, with a lot of the TV shows, all those preconceived notions are used, and it makes our jobs a little harder sometimes when we have to explain to them that, you know, you're watching a TV show, you can't take it as gospel.
Right.
No, they're edited for profit. They're not edited for education. No matter how much integrity the people on the show and investigators have, I'm not going to say anything negative about any of the people and their motivation, but
right.
The shows aren't on TV if they don't get ratings, and if the shows aren't exciting, they don't get watchers.
Now, for you, when you come across, how do you discern the difference between human and non-human entities?
I usually, because I can see a bit more about who they are and what they are that way. It's just like kind of the difference between looking at you and looking at a cat or a dog or a goldfish or something. Okay. And then the communication with them. Sometimes communication, sometimes not. And the communication is more often than not psychic, but it's sometimes a little more direct than that as well. And there are, in the area I live in, there are lots of entities that are tied to the land and are part of what a lot of the lore of the history of the indigenous, well, I'm sorry, we don't have indigenous people really here on this continent, but the Native Americans. And they were here first, before the Native Americans, but then people who were more accessible to beings that are out there were then able to form a mythology around these, which may or may not be true, but I see a lot of them like that. And to be honest, I haven't come across anybody yet. I can't at least have a mutual respect and, if not get along with where we sit and chat, at least hear the story and not bother each other. That's happened in a lot of different times to me. And you know, one of the other points too I wanted to mention about the whole idea about something's a demon, we often put out, if we go into a space expecting negative activity, we're very likely to trigger that with our own emotion, our own energy.
Right.
And a lot of these beings have been, in a sense, attacked by societies for so many millennia, spiritually or physically in different ways. A lot of times they're just really defensive, and they're protecting themselves.
Sure. Right. We try to come into a couple different cases where we've explained to people how we look at things, and not only does the energy transfer into the other realm after death, but in some cases the personality of a person carries on too. So if you're a nice old lady in life, you're going to be a nice old lady in death. And the same goes for the old hermit that's very angry. Yeah. Just because you go into their home and you get a negative experience, or you had that negative experience, doesn't mean that the house is crawling with demons. It could just mean that we're in this entity's space. He doesn't like that, and he's very defensive.
Right. Exactly. I agree. And even with things like the number 3, okay, well, if a dog scratches you, if you're just got it set up right, a lot of times you'll have 3. A quick scratch with hands and your fingernails, often you'll get 3 lines, not 5, because of the way the fingers come out.
Right. That's a very, very, very good point, actually.
So, I just don't necessarily buy it. And who makes up the rules that 3 means
exactly
haunted in the trilogy anyway?
Right. I completely agree.
Yeah. It's more founded by religious, faith-based knowledge or belief, and that's totally fine. I'm not knocking it by any measure, but I also say that these things, I mean, I'm agnostic, and I personally know that I've had, a demonic entity disrupt my life and make my life a living hell for several years. But yet it also, goes to say that, they hate everything about the, humans, living people like us. And so whether it's religious or not, they despise us. Again, these are super, super rare that these kind of encounters, take place.
Right.
Right.
And I, for one, have, in the time that I've been doing research and investigating, have yet to run into anything that would lead me to believe that the spirit is anything but just an angry spirit. I've never once felt the need to label something as being demonic, and I think that there are so many people out there that will do that and can cause more damage, not only to the field, but can cause even more problems within a home when you tell somebody, yeah, you're dealing with demons, and we brought somebody in and they got possessed during there's just so much of that. It's very disconcerting.
Now, do you find, William, that you actually, for a good kind of example of a phrase, do you consider yourself sometimes like a mop-up crew coming behind other science-based groups that really are just misfiring on all cylinders, and they've got their clients freaked out and believing there's something else going on, when in fact you're able to tell them, look, this is what it, really is going on, and it's misunderstood?
I've been really fortunate, and I haven't had to work with many groups like that. And one of the things now, I'm a satellite member of SSPR. I think technically West Coast is sort of still together, but we're not right now. So a lot of what I do is freelance, which is kind of nice, but I really get to help pick and choose. And I often read a house before I go there, or I call. And what I've often been telling homeowners now is, if you can live with what's there, and you already know it's there, you might not want to have an investigation, because investigations can stir up more activity.
Right.
I don't want to talk them out of it if that's what they want, but just a warning. But I've been pretty lucky, because I've worked with people with integrity for the most part. I've had one group that I was involved with for a very short time that my human judgment didn't serve me well, and we didn't do any formal investigations other than kind of practice runs with different people. So I was able to go afterwards and kind of say, because it's difficult. On one hand, you don't want to rebut the leader of the team.
Sure.
And people doing things. I remember this one case where, with this group, we were at a team member's house who had a bunch of activity, and they used a very Christian-based form of trying to kick everybody out of the whole neighborhood. And I was sitting back there and watching all these entities just laughing at them.
Right.
And about 3 days later, the activity got worse. But that was the last time I had anything to do with that group, for lots of reasons. And
so that's a great example of, I guess it's somewhat of a form of arrogance, but just it comes down to being, misunderstanding. Some folks come in thinking, because of their belief system, that it's going to be a fix-all for what's going on. Just like you have some paranormal investigators that believe that provocation is just an absolute sin in the field of paranormal research, when in fact they're being very nice, may very well piss off the old crotchety spirit that was antisocial in his living life, and now as they're residing in the home that they're investigating, and they're trying to be, nice as pie, and it's still ticking them off.
Right, and that's a good point. And this is a conversation you and I have had several times, Ben, with just the definition, because so often the definition of provocation that we think of is the one from the TV shows
Right.
where they're going in and calling them names and trying to get
Exactly.
them to punch them in the face. And your point is really, really good. You're talking more about an unintentional provocation.
Yeah, it's inadvertent.
Yes, and I agree. And it goes back with the whole idea of, even to me, what a haunting mostly is. I also haven't come across anything I'll call a trapped soul. It's mostly energy that's there, that's left there as an imprint of the person, and it can be intelligent, intellectual, it can communicate. But if the part of that person that's most prevalent in that spot was a mean old SOB, that's the entity you're going to deal with. And his soul may be really doing well in healing in where he is now. But that which he left behind is going to be that crotchety old whatever.
Yeah. And you brought up a really good point. I think what we'll do here is take a break, but I'd like to come back and touch on the idea of bound spirits and things like that.
We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Oregon Paranormal Radio. I'm sitting here with my co-host, Ben Robison, and our guest, William Becker. I want to give a quick shout out to Mike Smith at the Info Sub. He's always very gracious with our show, and he broadcasts us every Saturday at 5 p.m. on the Info Sub.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
You can also catch Ben's show, ASEP Radio, before Oregon Paranormal Radio on the Info Sub at infosub.listen2, the number 2, myradio.com, and that's on Saturdays. So again, thank you, Mike Smith. We're going to get back into the show where we finished off in the first half talking about bound spirits. What are your thoughts on bound spirits, William?
And it's another one of those cases where I'm not going to say 100% they don't exist, but I haven't ever come across one. And I've been with people who say they have, and they have, quote, released them, but they're still there. There are full spirits that come and visit and will hang out to be around and help us and do all kinds of things, and it can be wonderful. But they're there by choice. And I think what happens is we have so much in the media, and there's so much from a religious perspective, and to be honest, I'm not even sure how they got that out of, from a scriptural perspective. I don't see how it all fits, because I've done an awful lot of study in my life, and I haven't come across anything that discusses this the way they talk about it.
Right.
And the going into the light and such. I think that was first. But I haven't seen it.
So speaking of bound, and I'm glad that we're on this topic, because this comes up a lot with investigations, and one of the things that we always ask our clients is, what do you want to gain out of this investigation? Because we, at least on the Oregon Paranormal side, when we go into an investigation, we let them know that we're there to help them validate their claims. We're there to help ease some of the anxiety that they have about whatever it is that's going on in their home. But we're not Ghostbusters. We don't show up with proton packs in an old ambulance. We don't guarantee that we can resolve any situation that's going in the house. What we let them know we can do is we'll hopefully empower them with the tools to take back their home, and in some cases live in the home with the entities and in a peaceful manner where they can just coexist. So how do you handle that? Have you had people say, well, when you come into my house, I want you to get rid of the spirit? How do you handle that?
I tell them we don't do that. I'm pretty upfront about it. And usually what I've found is once they know what's there, they're okay with it. They're
Same here.
afraid of the unknown. And once they know that they're not crazy, things really are happening. And once they know that that scary being is really a 6-year-old girl, and it's her energy from when she liked to do this type of behavior, they're usually okay with it. I've got to, not only have I not come across the bound soul and tend to not believe in it, I also have the ethics that I don't have a right necessarily to kick them out, even if I could. And I don't do that. If somebody really wants to get a hold of somebody that can maybe try to get a spirit out, and again, I haven't ever seen it really work. I at least have a couple people I trust who are honest and ethical people I'll try to connect with, but it's not something I work with. For once, the ethics involved, you can make the situation so much worse.
Oh, absolutely.
So it begs to ask, though, William, why then do some spirits reside and stay in a location, and then others, and I guess it would probably be on the more, less than side here of spirits and claims that are free spirited moving around.
Well, I think again, it's the energy. The piece of that, we leave behind a piece of ourselves in these locations. And I think that's also part of why you can experience the same entity in more places than once at a time. Where I live, the joke is that the churches have moved, the houses have moved, all the graves have moved. It's no wonder that the ghosts are wandering.
Right.
But I find that a lot just in general anyway. I've got people that follow me around when I give the ghost tours because they like me. And it's part of them. Part of the reason I don't think they're spirits, too, is that usually it's not multidimensional enough. A human being is a fairly complex spiritual being as far as intellect, emotion, you put it all together. And most of these beings that I come across that are human-based are too flat to be a soul.
What do you mean by that?
They don't have enough depth to who they are and the personality, and you see just a few pieces of somebody. You don't see all of somebody.
Okay, so this is something through the ether that you're seeing. This isn't, because what I'm trying to help visualize for the listener here is like when you say something's flat. Is there a way for us to maybe visualize like somebody we've known that maybe has that flat personality, but it sounds like this is more a different dynamic, something you've seen psychically.
Right, and well, I've read with the person, and actually that's a good question, and I need to be careful about how I say see. Yes, I have seen full-bodied apparitions that look just like you or I or any of the rest of us, but those are really, really, really rare. Most of the time, if you're seeing a visual, it's a shadow, or it's a piece of something, or it's very translucent, or it's whatever, and those aren't that common.
Sure.
So when I see, I'm usually talking about psychically see.
Okay.
And think about it, you've got a great Uncle Joe, and he loves to play cards and smoke cigars, and when he's sober and it's in the morning, he's bouncing the kids on his knees, and he's wonderful, and all this, and after he's been in the pub for 5 hours, he's fighting. So the part of him that you see at the pub, all you may be seeing is a drunk fighter.
Ah, that's a very, very good point. I like that.
That's
But
interesting.
in the breast room, you may getting the Uncle Joe that bounces the kids on his knees.
Yeah, and that makes sense because in our living lives, you go to a job, you act different than what you do at home, or at least the majority of us do. You go to a gala or something like that, you're going to act different than what you do, at work even. So. Exactly. Yeah, that's a very fascinating point, and I'm really glad you kind of bring that up because I guess I
haven't thought of that.
Yeah, I hadn't either, and so I'm sitting here going, "Wow!" Thanks to William, I've opened up another door here, and considering why, and that kind of falls in with the whole, just the whole deathbed, kind of thing where somebody that's what they saw, so they're trying to get that last message out on their dying,
Oh, right.
breath.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe sometimes that's why we just get that, is because that's what they were doing at that time. Or
Exactly.
yeah,
And especially that trauma that created that imprint so strongly.
yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
And
So
again, it's part of the joy of this field is nobody can prove us wrong.
hmm
Part of the frustration of this field is, well, there's no way we can prove ourselves right.
right,
And so that's why I try to clarify. I'm going from my experience, my understanding, my research, and what I learned from other people is part of that, but it's theory.
right.
It's hypothesis, maybe. But that's about as close as we can really get.
I was just speaking with Scott today. We did a podcast this morning, and I was telling him one of the things that I think is lacking is the fact that this whole field as a whole is exactly what you just said, filled with theories. But how much effort by paranormal groups is actually going into trying to prove these theories and throwing out the ones that are bad and bringing in ones that are a little bit more sound. And then at that point, I brought in we brought up Michael White and how he is doing these really cool experiments. And
That's a fascinating man right there.
I absolutely agree. And one of them, I think, was it a PK experiment? That didn't you work with him on that one, Ben?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm really pleased to be able to call Michael a good friend, and I have been able to be part of one of his experiences or experiments, and hopefully more, and just amazing kinds of things. Where is this the one that we're still looking at, or Ben, were you on another one? If I jumped in inappropriately.
Oh no, you're fine.
You're right on track.
Yeah, my wandering mind sometimes. But they were able to hear us and some of what we said. They were able to
Really?
feel us. And I can talk about this because he's published the results. He felt me tapping on his shoulder. I'd never been to his house. I'd never seen pictures. I described the front yard. I described the house. And I described perfectly a layout for the experiment and the equipment. I was dead wrong for the experiment we were doing, but I was exactly right for a previous experiment that I had no knowledge of. So you see, when you're doing the readings remotely, you're reading through all kinds of time and layers and all kinds of stuff, which also then, just because you have two people reading the same place and they're getting different things, doesn't mean that either one of them is wrong.
Sure.
They're reading different layers or different people.
Right.
So it was a fascinating experience. Michael's doing a lot of great work that way. I know somebody else who is really working on the research piece and how it works and the theories. And I'm looking at this picture right now as we Skype. And it sounds, Casey, like you're doing a lot of that now with your group too.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about, when we first got in the field, it wasn't, I didn't get into it because of an experience. I got into it more of a fascination that I'd always had with the paranormal. And it wasn't until about a year in where I realized that, there were people that were involved with these stories that we were taking part in. And that was a bigger piece than just, going out and trying to collect evidence. And
Right.
Once I realized that we were there to help these families that genuinely were terrified and needed help, that's when I wanted to turn my focus more on the research aspect and start looking into, why is this happening, and not just not just, going in and saying, oh, we got EVPs, your house
Right.
is haunted, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's always I like that. See, because it just seems like we fail so much at staying with the objective task, which is, to help them figure out what's going on. That doesn't mean helping them figure out what's going on doesn't mean just providing them pictures, videos, and audio.
Right.
You gotta stick with it. It's gonna take a while sometimes. So
That's why I really value the work that you're working on now too, Ben, and the way you're branching off and doing this. And Ben and Michael have both said that they will speak at the Oregon Ghost Conference this year and about the type of research and different things they're doing. I haven't gotten the written confirmation from.
it's coming. It's coming.
Okay, but I wanted really to get people doing that kind of work talking about it, and it's different than what you hear at the conferences as a general rule.
Let's
I think
roll in.
it's important.
Yeah, let's roll into that too. Let's. I want to touch on the Oregon Ghost Conference and finding your psychic voice. But let's start with OGC.
Okay. The conference this year is going to be the second weekend in April. I believe that's the 11th, 12th, and 13th. And I've talked to a lot of great people who say that they're going to be coming and speaking, and in a lot of variety. Until I've got the speakers table form in, I say it's tentative, and things happen. We've had speakers before in the past who have had family emergencies or health issues and can't show. So anytime you have a speakers list, it's always a little tentative. But
Right.
we've got you and Michael talking about the technical, the research pieces that you're going with. We have somebody who, and I don't want to use names with these people yet because they've confirmed, but they haven't confirmed in writing yet.
Sure.
We've got people that run historic haunted venues that have been filmed in such many times, and places where I've held classes, coming to talk about what it's like and how it works with a venue like that. I've got people from the TV show that are saying they want to come, but nobody's given me 100%. Last night I was told again that somebody's going to get in touch with me soon. So I'm hopeful about that. Paranormal Underground Radio is going to be there. Karen Fraser, I believe, is going to do record a radio program there. I'm planning on speaking at this point because I've been doing some more research and putting together some more theory, and where I'm really going with things with my own teaching and what's coming up. There have been a few other people that well-known people around, that I've heard that there's somebody who is an animal talker and healer that's told my contact for her that she's coming, but again, I haven't heard anything. But I haven't gotten the direct confirmation, but there's a lot building up for this. I think it's going to be really good.
Well, and I imagine that's the same thing you go through every year. There's always a lot of churn, and then there's people who peel off, and then it's people that are always kind of like always can count on them, old faithfuls, and then you got people who just fill in, because that's how I got my first opportunity to speak. The first year was I kind of got to fill in as a result, and though I wasn't anywhere prepared, I got to have that opportunity, which I was extremely grateful for.
And you did a great job, and
thank you.
Yeah, and so it's, and you just roll with it. I mean, anytime you do an event like this, life happens.
Yeah.
And you don't get upset. You understand things happen, and you go with plan B or C or D, and it works, and everybody has a good time.
So,
Now,
some of the... I'm sorry, go ahead.
The one thing, I know that people had trouble with some of the sound last year, but the amazing state of this audiovisual system has been completed now, and so
That's exactly what I was going to ask about.
That's cool.
the venue,
Yeah.
we can now plug into these incredible speakers and sound system directly with the mics that it used to only be worked when they were playing movies.
I truly feel that that's going to really help out Oregon Ghost Conference, especially for the attendees. I know a lot of us that are sitting at our booths, because we have to also, man those booths and interface with the client, the people coming through, all the attendees. We still like to be able to hear it, and it was very much challenging for us before. So I'm really looking forward to that, and that's exciting news.
And that's part of why we try to keep as much as we can in that main ballroom, too, so that people can hear as much as possible. As we grow, we may have to expand out and reorganize some things a little bit. But I'm looking forward to it. It's a lot of fun. I did get the speaker table form in from Ronnie Barrett, so I can say Ronnie Barrett from the Klondike is coming.
Awesome.
I just remembered that.
And that's one of the good things about the Oregon Ghost Conference is that it's just not the haunting aspect. You've got people from MUFON that are there, and we've got people from that study cryptozoology.
Yes.
So and I have somebody, my boss's husband is actually interested in setting up a booth because he does palmistry. So it's a huge gamut that it runs, and it's a great opportunity for people to come in and meet these groups
and network.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we like to have a variety of people who do, palmistry we haven't had anybody before, but card readers, psychics, different kinds of people. And if we can get enough of them, we can put together a whole section just for them, too.
Yeah.
I've thought about trying to do some of it myself, but to be honest, I don't have time. When I'm there.
Yeah, I've watched you, and you've got sweat rolling down your brow, and you have to have that smile constantly beaming from your face. I've held personal parties or functions, and being that host, you walk away just exhausted at the end of it. I can't imagine what it's like for you and Rocky at the end of each day.
We're tired, but we're also pretty, well, and I won't talk for him because he's his own person, but tired, but usually pretty excited.
Yeah.
Because I get to see a lot of friends and meet a lot of people, and I never get to spend time with anybody, but I at least get to say hello, and I make a point of making sure I talk to everybody there at least a couple times, at least briefly. And then you're running and doing everything, and the adrenaline's running. And at the end of the day, so far, we feel like we've done a nice event and people have had a good time.
Yeah.
I try to look and make sure people are enjoying themselves and feeling like the experience is worth it. I mean, if they're happy, I'm happy.
Real quick, run through the dates one more time and throw a plug out there for the website so people can go to.
Okay, the dates are April 11th, 12th, and 13th. Let me double check my calendar. It's the second weekend in April. The website is OregonGhostConference.com, and to be honest, Rocky does the ghost, or the website, and we've had the death of an officer in Oregon City just recently and different things. And as a city commissioner and somebody who grew up with a father who's a retired police officer from town and brother-in-law who's a current one and has grown up and knows those guys, it's been rough. So if the website's not up and updated yet, please don't hold us against this.
Well, hopefully Rocky knows he's got friends out there that can always help. So our hats off to you guys for all your efforts in running this. It's a very, very important thing, and I am a huge supporter of it.
I appreciate it. I'm very much so.
One more thing I want to make sure we plug. January 11th, you're holding the Haunted Hotspots event at the Walker Ames house, so I want to make sure that people know about that.
Great, yes. And the information for that is on my website, paranormalinsights.net. And I think this one will be 3.5 hour class.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the house is wonderful.
Yeah,
Both
tell us a little
both-
bit about that.
Yeah, the house or the class?
Both, but the house. Start with the house as the premise here of why
Yeah.
you chose it.
Well, the Walker Ames house is a very active house in Port Gamble. It's the biggest house. On the outside, it's probably the most beautiful. On the inside, it's a little run down. Nobody has wanted to pay the rents. Port Gamble's still a company town, and you would have to pay a high rent to rent the place and completely redo it on your own dime. It's got beautiful fireplaces and wood floors and a gorgeous, gorgeous wood staircase, and it's just a really lovely place. And there are entities and activity pretty much on every floor, and a lot of things that were pretty sad happened in the house. So what I do is I take a class or take people there, and we start by basic techniques, grounding and centering, learning how to shield and filter a little bit. So protection things and how to...
And those are the same things you go through with your regular weekly classes of finding your psychic voice that you hold at Coffee Rush right in downtown Oregon City, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And how much of that we do depends on who's there and how much experience they have on
Right.
any of these. My classes, I don't have a set syllabus for everything. It fluctuates by who's there and how it proceeds. And we spend our time working individually, working with various other people, opening ourselves up to talk to the entities there, to start seeing them, listening to them, and hearing their stories if they want to give it to them. I have people work alone to see what that's like. I have people pair up and then switch and work part of the time with people they know, part of the time if possible with people they don't know, just to see how the different energies work. And you can either amplify the psychic ability or distract from it, because all of those things happen.
Right.
And then I invite people to bring handheld instruments as well, but as a backup, not as the primary. It's a psychic development class, so we're here to develop your psychic abilities, and the millimeter can help confirm that there's somebody there, or maybe you can get an EVP
Right.
from what you've picked up psychically. So it's just kind of reverse in the sense of an investigation. And
That's
one
really
of my
cool.
biggest challenges with scientific-based investigators who come is getting them to switch gears
Yeah.
into the psychic first with the science.
And I can attest to that. And Casey, I'm gonna pimp out William right now for him.
Do it.
You really need to check out his class, Finding Your Psychic Voice. He holds it in Oregon City, hop, skip, and a jump from where you live in Molalla, and I think you'd find it fascinating. I've been to a few of them, and it's been a real eye opener, and I mean a third eye opener.
I'm interested. I definitely
Yeah.
want to look into that.
Great. Oh, thank you so much. And I'm happy to hold classes for people whenever or do things. And I've got a new one too that's more of an integration of opening our senses to more of all of what's around us and using that as a way of becoming more fully ourselves and learning more fully our own truth.
Great.
And
Excellent.
so
Yeah.
this is where I think things are really going long term. So
Well, William? Yeah, you got it. Casey, go for it.
I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, William. Give yourself one more plug, and then, Ben, I want to make sure that you give yourself a plug on all your stuff, and then I'll finish off with my plugs, and then we'll end this thing.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much. I've really enjoyed it. Paranormal Insights is the name of the organization. I'm Para Insights on Facebook because that's what would fit, and at Paranormal Insights on Twitter. But if you want to get a hold of me, the best way, go to my website, paranormalinsights.net, and my email address is there. And that's probably the best way to make sure I get the message.
Great. And you got the Walker Ames class on, I think, probably the best day of every year, January 11th. So if folks are out there want to really get that involvement, I highly suggest that you go to parainsights.net and look up.
Paranormalinsights.net.
I'm sorry, paranormal. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Paranormalinsights.net and get that information and get tickets, and you won't regret it. It's a great experience.
I thank you, and I wish you were coming then.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, because it is the greatest day of the year, I will be celebrating my birthday. So I've already got some committed plans, but William, I'd be there in a heartbeat if I didn't.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. As Casey said, I'm going to give myself a quick plug. I run the Autonomous Studies of the Enigmatic and Paranormal, which is also known as ASEP. You can reach me through my website. It's www.a-sep.org. My phone number is 971-200-5276. And I'm on Facebook. You just go to, my website, and I have a blog as well as ASEP Radio that you can hit through all those. And I'd also like to give another shout out to Mike Smith over at InfoSub as well.
I can, of course, Oregon Paranormal Radio, can be reached at Facebook.com/Oregon Paranormal Radio. Investigation requests and all other informational stuff can be found at OregonParanormal.com. Our phone number is 503-482-9160. Our next guests, once our schedules all mesh, will be Patrick Doyle from Ghostmine, and we've added a second guest to that episode, which will be Jay Verberg. And as soon as we have a tentative schedule with everybody, we'll get that recorded and out to the masses. So until then, thanks for listening, and take care.
Have a good night.
Good night.